y'all. Hey guys. Kim here, and you are tuned into Kim E, the Diabetes MP. And so we're back. We're back for another Lunch and Learn. You may, I'll just go ahead and tell you. This is being pre-recorded. When you're watching this, I am currently out of town, and I wanted to make sure that we stay consistent. And so therefore, I am recording this so you all can have content. And I will be honest with you, my desire is to do this live, but it takes a lot of time because you have to actually be here. And in the coming months, I will be taking on some other responsibility. I've already kind of taken on some other responsibility professionally. And so it would be better and a better use of my time if I pre-record these. So don't be surprised if you get more like this when I can come on live. I will. But I want us to, more so than anything, I want this to be consistent, and I don't want to have a lot of breaks. I don't want to have a lot of breaks. And so anyway, this is pre-recorded. And so anyway, so let me tell you about a little bit about myself for those who don't know, as well as tell you about what this series is all about. Like I said, my name is Kim Ellis, and I am known online as Kim E, the Diabetes MP. My specialty is chronic disease management, especially through the lens of prediabetes and diabetes type 2. The reason why I specialize in diabetes is because it is very all-encompassing of a lot of chronic diseases. To be able to properly manage diabetes, you have to consider and deal with the blood pressure and the cholesterol and a slew of other chronic diseases as well. And so my hope with my platforms is to help us to be able to see how we can better deliver care. Because of this, because of that desire, I decided to get certified in Lean Six Sigma to really get better at the process improvement when it comes to healthcare. And so I do that offline and help in addition to me doing this, in addition to me working full time in my 9 to 5, I also do consulting where I help organizations really evaluate how they can deliver care better. And that can come through me coming in and evaluating their processes, observing their staff, observing their workflows and what they're already doing. And then also seeing where there's any gaps in care, gaps in education, and giving them recommendations to better reach their goals. And so here, what I like to do is as I find things, whether it be in a professional sense or, things that I have read, conversations that I have had, I want to be able to share from what I'm learning so we can learn together. So, anywho, let me bring up my slide. Alrighty. And let me take off that so you can see it all. So today, now stay with me, bear with me. I've recently was listening to a conversation, and one of the topics that were talked about was difficult patients and how do we deal with patients that are quote unquote difficult, okay? And I've actually been a part of a few of these types of conversations, and I've had this question asked to me, what do you do when you have a patient that doesn't want to follow the treatment plan or that's non-compliant? They're not adhering to the treatment plan. And one of the things that I always think, and sometimes I say it, I don't say it rudely, but I often think, like, is it the patient or is it you? So today I wanted to kind of unpack that because I feel like, yes, we do need to know what to do for our patients with diabetes management. Yes, we need to know what medicines are out there, how to follow the algorithm, which again, on my YouTube channel, on all my social media outlets, I believe I have laid a great foundation for that. So if you're not following me over on YouTube, Kim E, the Diabetes MP, you definitely should be subscribed. And I have a ton of playlists that you can go back and refresh yourself on the foundational things. But we're still in the same place, even knowing all of those things, we're still faced with the results and the statistics that we have, which are alarming, okay? So So we have to ask ourselves, what is the problem then? Is it the patient or is it us? And so let's talk a little bit about it and unpack it. This is just kind of discussionary, even though you guys can talk back to me. But we'll get into it. So is that patient really difficult or is it you? So let's talk about that in an honest conversation. And these are just my thoughts on this, okay? One of the things that I have found when I have worked with healthcare professionals, and I've worked with more than just nurse practitioners, I've worked with pharmacists and pharmacist students, I've worked with physicians, RDs, dietitians, registered nurses, you name it. You know, anyone that will come in contact with someone who has diabetes, that helps cares for someone with diabetes, I'll talk to them, okay? And one thing that I think we focus a lot on is we focus on what we do and when we do, but we don't talk about how we do enough. And I understand that we're all different and there's room for clinical judgment, which is great. Our algorithms leave room for clinical judgment because you are the only person that's looking your patient in the face. If you're the one that is continuously looking after your patient, there's continuity there. That's something that an algorithm can't help you through. They're making more of a standard, a guideline, and you use your judgment, right? But what I have found is that when you have people with varying degrees of experience, people who are newer to the space, people who are kind of stuck in their ways, there's a lot of different variations with how we even deal with our patients, right? And even within an organization, I remember working on the floor, and here we are, all of us are on the same unit, but we all do things so much differently, and there's really no rhyme or reason, and some people can't even explain why they do what they do. And so the best way for us to approach this is this, guys. We are not dealing with robots. We are dealing with people. You have to view the person that is in front of you, and you have to understand that people are full of depth. People come with a lot of experiences. There are a lot of things that are going on in our patients' lives, so there is no one size fits all. And also knowing that if you do have a patient that is declining or their numbers are declining, instead of automatically assuming some type of issue on their part, coming from a space of assuming, good intentions, that we go further and have that connection to ask our patients, what's going on? Let's have a conversation. I've noticed this. Can you tell me what's going on? Because you will find sometimes that it's not that the patient doesn't want to do that, but there are other circumstances that are keeping them from reaching goals. Maybe their goals have changed, and that's okay too. Like, I think we speak a lot about goals and getting the patient to goals only from a perspective of getting them under the A1C of 7%. Well, that may not be a good goal for someone. And there are situations that are like that. Maybe getting somebody under 7 is not the optimal goal for them, at least not at this moment. And you have to be able to be open and not be so black and white what you're reading, but realize that we are dealing with living people that have depth, full of depth, full of variation. And so when we have these tools like the algorithm, when we have this research, we have to understand that it's only supposed to be a guide. It's not the end all be all. We have to use our brains, because what robots don't have, I know I love this, I love the movie I, Robot, and Will Smith's character, his big thing against robots is that all they could do was compute statistics. And he talks about how he lost his arm and how he was in this bad car accident because, and he was saved, but there was a little girl that was also in another car that lost her life because the robot that saved them, that jumped in to save them, computed that he had more of a chance to survive instead of her. But as a human, and these are his words, as a human, even if she had a lower percentage of survival, because she still had a percentage of survival, he just had a higher one than her, that someone would go after the child because it's a kid, right? We're going to save the children. We're going to save the women first, you know? And so that's what I mean by this statement of like, we are dealing with people. We have to think with our minds, but we also have to understand that we also have spirit, we also have heart, and that people have other circumstances. And so that's one thing. Also, we have to take accountability with those decisions. Some of it is us. Some of it is us assuming and thinking that people are not going to do something and that they're not going to be able to do this, and we don't even give it a shot. And I have entered into conversations where people really have not exhausted all routes, but they're very strong and have very great conviction on how they feel, but you've not done everything. And unfortunately, but fortunately, that's part of our role. We are care coordinators, and I understand it's long suffering, it's hard, you know, and I know like no other because the majority of my experience has been community health, and that's all I do is connect with all I do is connecting people with resources in healthcare facilities with resources. That's all I do, you know. But I do that because once I figure out one route, I can reuse that route for the next person that comes and the next person. And so we have to take accountability in what we play in this as well. The last lunch and learn that I did, I talked about tirzepatide. And one of the things that I brought up, a question that was brought to me is, how do you get prescribing providers to buy into even considering a new therapy, a novel therapy? And the reason why this question was brought up is because when this question was brought to me, I was leading a dinner discussion at a conference this past summer. And we were discussing this medication, and many of the people in the room, though they were certified diabetes educators, many of them did not have prescriptive authority. So many of them are in the role of just educator and consultant. They can consult other people, but they can't actually write an order for it. And they were finding that even when they brought anything new to a provider, many people being resistant to it. We have to hold ourselves accountable, guys. Like, why are we so resistant to new and innovative therapies and things? And why are we so resistant to doing something different? The old regime of this is how we've always done it, we can't do that. We can't do that. Because one of the things that I've learned, especially in like process improvement, is that a lot of times the ways that we do stuff, a lot of times it's called a hokey pokey. Where basically like it was just like a quick fix for a problem, but it was never intended to continue on. So when I was working in a hospital or at a clinic, and people are saying, well, you ask people, well, why do we do it this way? Well, we've always done it this way. When you do more digging, especially as a consultant, I'll go and dig a little bit more, and I realize, well, the reason why people do it this way is because this was a quick fix from 5 years ago, and nobody ever went back to get a long-term solution. And this solution is not serving us, but it was never intended to serve us because it was only supposed to be a quick fix. And you see how that can happen so many times? It happens often. We've seen it happen often. So we have to be able to hold each other accountable, but also have some accountability in what we play when it comes to the quote unquote difficult patients. I do not like that term. I do not like that term at all. But ultimately, really where we should be is we should stay curious and always be in a place where we're always willing to learn, even if it is from an unlikely source. And so getting into the conversation of adherence, non-compliance and stuff, and before I move on to this, let me kind of hop back here right quick and let me say one more thing about this last statement here. Being willing to learn even from an unlikely source. So I think as we gain more education, sometimes we you feel like we can't learn from those who don't have as much experience, or those who don't have as much credentials, as many credentials as us, well, if that is how you feel or how you move in your practice, you're going to be at a disadvantage, because no one person knows everything about everything, okay? Even in diabetes management, I'll be the first to tell you, I am competent in inpatient diabetes management, but I have not worked in patients since I was a registered nurse. All of my NP experience, all of my prescribing provider experience has always been outpatient. I have always been a part of that, and this is just my personality. I love taking care of people that I can walk the journey with them. That is just my preference. And so when it comes to that, clearly the type of diabetes I come in contact with often is type 2. And that is a chronic disease that a person needs help walking the walk with, right? And so I can find that, even in myself, I can go in, and because I've been doing this for a while and I see other people talking about it, or I'll go into like a meeting or a conference or something, and it's like I'm always having to check myself at the door, like, be a willing vessel to learn. It doesn't matter who it comes to. It doesn't matter who the messenger is. I'm willing to learn, and I'm willing to explore and to be curious. Okay. So, adherence, non-compliance, all the things. Now, language is important, and over the summer, I spent some time doing presentations, and this is something that I really talked about, and I've told everybody that I spoke to. I'm a big person on words. I'm a big person on definition, because words mean it, okay? They mean it. And a lot of times we can get to talking in our language, and we kind of lose what things really mean, right? So I love to define words, and I love to make sure that I'm using the correct language. Now, the great thing about the diabetes industry, the American Diabetes Association, and the Diabetes Care and Education Specialists, and pretty much every medical healthcare body, there is a huge movement with language. And not just in healthcare. If you've noticed, in the world, we're trying to have better language, because language matters and it's important. The reason why is because what you say evokes feelings, it evokes emotion. And using your words to build up is what is optimal, but we have to also realize that our words can break down as well. And so I wanted to define these words and just allow you to see this for yourself and think to yourself, what would be a better word, right? And again, if you make a mistake, you go so many years where you're saying something, it takes a while to switch over. So, have grace on yourself and have grace with others. But non-compliance, my definition, is the failure to act in accordance with a wish or a command. Now look at some of those words in there. Failure, command. When you think about those words, you don't think of partnership. You think of, this is what this person is supposed to do. This is what I set before them, and they didn't do it. Now, is that really an approach that we really should be taking with our patients? When we want them to be the ones that are self-managing, we know research has told us that you get better health results when the patient takes ownership of their diagnosis. Does that evoke that? It doesn't. It doesn't. And you want to come always from a strength-based approach, not from what they're not doing, but what they are doing right. Doesn't matter how small it is, but what they are doing right, because we all know, psychology has taught us that positive reinforcement helps us all. It just doesn't help children. It doesn't help just our animals when we're trying to teach them tricks and train them. It helps us as adults as well. Positive reinforcement is huge. And so part of that is affirming people and telling them what they are doing right versus what they are doing wrong. It doesn't mean that you don't talk about what they're not doing right, but you need to lead and then close off with what they have done, what they are doing right. I love the build, break, build model. You say something that's going to build somebody up, then you introduce the thing that could kind of break somebody, but then you always lead off with the build up, right? This is what you're doing great. This is the area that we could probably improve in. But you know what? I want you to keep doing this because you're doing great, and I'm positive that you're going to be able to improve in that one area. Those are the types of conversations that we need to have. Let's look at the word adherence. Attachment or commitment to a person, cause, or belief. So out of those two words, which one seems to be a better use of the word? What do we really want our patients to do? You know, we do want them to have a commitment to their care, to their health journey. So adherence, probably a better word. It's something about that word that I don't particularly like. I don't use either one personally. I like to say, are we meeting our goal? You know, I like to say, because for one, your goal could be anything. And what meeting that goal is could be different from person to person. You know what I'm saying? Instead of saying that you failed or that you're sticking to something, you know, like, is this person at goal? And the great thing about it, we don't have to do this on our own. And even with me, I'm still learning myself, you know, because I came up in the regime of we call people diabetic, you know, but we now know that that is not the better way to say that. It's better to say a person with diabetes, a person with obesity, instead of saying an obese patient. Because what that does is defines that person as just somebody that's a diabetic. You are the diabetic. No, that person is more than a person that has diabetes. They're more than that. And needless to say, some of them may have more conditions than just diabetes. But we have named them this, like painted a scarlet letter under it. And so we don't have to do this alone. There's a lot of research and articles out here, especially from the governing bodies that manage and tell us what to do as people that manage diabetes. And so I'm going to put this in the description box of my YouTube channel if you would like to go and read this. The first one is from the Association of Diabetes Care and Education Specialists. They have a whole page with a wealth of different articles, videos that you can watch. And, you know, I've even seen a printout where, like, instead of saying this, say this. Love it, okay? And then also I pulled a journal article that I think would be very good as well, where we're really focusing on, with anything, you're focusing on a strength-based approach, okay? And so I always want to leave y'all with my thoughts. I've been really getting in my thoughts throughout this whole time, but want to leave you with some practicals, you know, that you can take, you can take with you. So for one, let's remember something, okay? When we're dealing with patients, and when I'm talking about the quote unquote difficult patient, is the patient difficult to manage or is it just you? This is what I'm saying, really, honestly. Is that you have those patients that don't want to, you set out a care plan and they're just kind of ignoring. Yeah, you have that type of difficult patient. But then you also have a difficult case where, like, the patient is doing everything, they're coming in and you're throwing everything that you know at them, still can't get to the target, right? You still can't get your target. That can also be considered a difficult case as well. And so one of the things that I want to put out here, especially for those who are new to managing diabetes, or those who may have transitioned from another background, and now you're trying to get better at this. You're trying to be efficient in it. I would first say Rome wasn't built in a minute. Okay. Now, chances are, if a person has diabetes, especially, if it's type 2, this has been something that has come about over years. Okay. Type 2 just doesn't come overnight. The whole pathophysiology of it and how it is. It's something that has been a part of this person's life, even if it was not are known to get them or their caregivers. This is something that has been building over years. And because we know that, we're not going to be able to quote unquote fix it overnight. Okay? Rome was not built in a day. And so understanding that you don't have to do everything when you see this person, you don't have to do everything, because for one, all that's going to do is overwhelm you, and it's going to overwhelm that patient. One of the things that I love to do with patients as I am coordinating their care is I will tell them and I'll let them know, like, this is what I overall want to do. But what we're focusing on today is this. So at least that signals to that patient, okay, she has a working plan, but we're going to take it step by step. People love it, okay? My patients, I've had great results by doing that. So just understanding that and also conveying that to your patients will help you tremendously. And one of the things that I do with organizations and also healthcare providers that I've worked with is that having and establishing a workflow. So when you have patients, how do you work them through? What does a visit look like for you? What does a new diagnosis look like for you? Feel through that. And I would even challenge you to do this not only for diabetes, but other chronic diseases that you need. Hypertension, right? And you can even have workflows for your acute conditions as well. But if you know that there is something that you consistently see, I remember my teachers used to tell us, common is common. So there's not a lot of quote unquote zebras that walk through our door. We see basically the same thing, right? There's variation, but how you can put some uniformity to this is if you have a workflow that you have. And for those who are managers, leaders, having a workflow for your staff. So having something that is for the nurse practitioners or for, the providers or whoever, how do you work a patient up? And it's actually something that is like not left to the provider to figure out. They have enough on their plate. Having a workflow. And you can do this by talking to everyone. What are the common things that everybody wants to make sure that they're checking off when they see a patient? And then you create a workflow. Also, having a clear timeline. So when the person leaves your office, what's the timeline for them? New diagnosis. When do you want them back? Okay, 1 month, I want them back. Or 2 months, I work them back. I want them back. Or 2 weeks, I want them back. I started a new medication. I changed the medication. I want them back in whatever. You know what I'm saying? And what is the timeline for that? Those are two slightly different things. One is kind of what you're going to do when they're in there in front of you, and the other is, okay, so moving forward, what is my timeline for them? And you can even create a long-term workflow from that. Also, address your assumptions. Again, and I speak a lot about this, we can carry our own biases and assumptions about certain groups, especially minorities. We can assume that people can't afford certain treatments, that they're not willing to pay out of pocket, that they're not going to do this, that, or another. We have to address that. And we all have them. I have them. Even as a minority times two, I'm a woman and I'm black. I have assumptions too that I make. But if you approach each person as an individual encounter, this is one of the ways that you can address your assumptions. And then lastly, please utilize your diabetes care and education specialists. Okay, so these are your diabetes educators. These are master diabetes educators. They can talk you through a lot of situations. Even if you don't have them come in and talk specifically to your patients, even consulting with the diabetes care and education specialist in your area will help you a lot. I can tell you right now, when I first started learning more about diabetes, and really the thing that really influenced me to become certified that there's so much knowledge that's kind of in the industry that if you're not in the industry, you don't really get first look at, you really don't know about, and you don't get the demonstrations that others do. And that goes for any specialty. So it's very easy to find who's in your area. You can go, and I'll leave that in the description box as well. But you can go to the CDCES website and you can locate programs in your area that are ran by CDCES, that are program managers by them, and coordinators. You can find independent DCESs. I myself, I work independently. I consult all over the nation and even internationally. And so being able to ask questions to a professional that knows this on a higher level, we don't have to work in silos. And I think a lot of times we want to just learn it all, and we feel like we need to know it all, but we don't. We don't. And I talked a little bit about this on the last Lunch and Learn about Preventative and utilizing your pharmacist when it comes to getting the coverage and the access to care. You don't have to do everything. Your staff doesn't have to do everything. Linking arms with people who may know some things or know routes that you may not be aware of. And so please utilize your DCES. And so lastly, guys, that's all I have. I just want to say, let's stay social. I thank you guys for popping on and listening to these and just watching them and giving me your feedback. And if you would like to stay social beyond this, you can definitely find me right now. This is going up I go live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and in my Facebook group. Over on Facebook, my Facebook group over on Facebook. But you can find me at my YouTube channel, Can Be the Diabetes NP. I'm active on Instagram and LinkedIn at the Diabetes NP. And if you have any questions, if there's something specific you want to learn, you want me to cover, you can email me at info@ellisdiabetes.com. And that's all I have, guys. I thank you all, and I will catch you next